Hello everyone. In this part 4 of chapter 2, we will discuss Rajaram Mohan Roy and Arya Samaj more particularly, and then consequently in our next videos we will discuss Bankim Chand Chatterjee, Jyotiba Phule, Mahadev Govind Ranade, Ramakrishna Mission, Theosophical Society, Muslim Reform movements, and the impact of all these movements in India. See, to begin with the earlier part, what we discussed is it was the Britishers. For example, Charles Trevelyan and Lord Macaulay, who simply discussed so many things about India and how India will win independence, for example, and whether we can delay the process of Indian independence movement or not. So here Charles Trevelyan suggested that yes, we can put India into a reformist position. But before this, Lord Macaulay and Charles Trevelyan, it was there were some other social reformers as well. William Bating, for example, while Macaulay followed strict interventionist policy, Hastings simply did not follow interventionist policy. His state or British state at that time was highly non-interventionist in nature. So at that time, we saw the rise of some social reformers during Hastings period or non-interventionist period. Among them was Rajaram Mohan Roy. He was most prominent. So now, if we see, as I have said earlier, that the beginning of the 19th century was heralded by the beginning of a new era in India. Now, this particular movement was described as the Indian Renaissance or Indian Awakening. Okay. Now, why Indian Renaissance and Indian Awakening? Because this particular era saw so many social and religious reform movements in India. This era is known as 19th century India. Okay, it was neither in any sense it was not a modern society, no, not at all, and Britishers were trying to give India a modern state, as we discussed earlier as well in detail. So at that time there were on the one hand society and on the other state, something like this. Now, see, society, the response of society was always aggressive at that time because they perceived various reforms or various laws passed by the Britishers as a threat to their identity and their culture and so on and so forth. But at the same time, there were many Indians. Later on, Charles Trevelyan also disclosed this phenomena to Lord Macaulay. There were many Indians who used to believe in British administration and the British democratic institutions. Rajaram Mohan Roy was among one of them. Okay, I'm not saying that he was supporter of British colonialism. No, Ram Mohan Roy was against colonialism, but he supported the ideas which Britain had. For example, parliamentary democracy, various democratic institutions, right to vote, equality, liberty, justice. Okay, so Ram Mohan Roy, that's why believed that many if Britishers survive here, so we will have so many democratic institutions. Okay, so his focus was less on Indian nationalism and more on social and religious reforms. Okay, so if we see this entire period of 19th century, we have seen the rise of Arya Samaj, the rise of Prarthana Samaj, the rise of Aligarh movement, Raja Ram Mohan Roy, and Ramakrishna Paramhans, and the Mahadev Govind Ranade, and Jyotiba Phule, and so on and so forth. So this entire era is known as the Indians were actually trying to replace their old age belief with the new ideas. What was the new ideas? They were actually replacing their old traditional or conservative values with reason and logic. So that attracted many youths of India at that time, because the reform movement in India is also known as an age of rationalism in society. So when people, more particularly young people, engage themselves in rationality, they find it interesting, and they start challenging the old notions, right? The old notions means the old and irrelevant notions, which simply doesn't have any logical ground. Now, the development of logical thinking during this period led many people to question many conservative and traditional ideas and practices which was prevailing in India. So that is why this era is known as Indian Renaissance or Indian Awakening. Now, see, if we discuss Raja Ram Mohan Roy, he is known as father of modern India. He was a great social thinker, as we all know, and he and his ideas was highly influenced by French Revolution and freedom movement from Ireland and Spain, for example, Naples, okay, Latin American countries, okay. So his ideas was diversified, no, and he learned so many things from these freedom movements or French Revolution, and he wanted India to be in that path. He wanted India to shed its old age conservatism, traditional structure of in every layer of the society, and the hierarchies of the society, whether it is based on caste or patriarchy, or on religious ground, and so on and so forth. So Rajaram Mohan Roy was actually trying to modernize Indian society. Now, see, he trusted the British administration, as I said earlier in this lecture itself, because he was of the view that the British regime in India will open the ways for the establishment of democratic institutions in India and democratic values in India, and people will follow democratic norms and practices. It is much more better than the feudal kingship of pre-British India. So that particular idea forced Rajaram Mohan Roy not to oppose Britishers in harsh way, but to first reform Indian social and religious structures and ill practices, and so on and so forth. When we see that in Bengal, he saw so many conservatism and so many types of ill practices going on. So he published his first work, that is known as, let me say it, Tuhfat al-Muwahhidin, if I am spelling it correct, Tuhfat al-Muwahhidin. Okay, this was his first book which he wrote, and a gift to deities and so on and so forth, deists. So in this book, he was more concerned with the sectarian religious dogmas and practices which are very much popular among Hindu society. He identified in this book the role of priestly class in promoting religious dogmas, irrational doctrines in India, more particularly in Bengal. And this priestly class was the direct beneficiary from all of these. So, first he started criticizing this priestly class in India. Why? For religious reform, number one. And he consider through religious reform we will achieve twin tasks. One is social reform and another one is political modernization. So his idea was that we have to reform the ill practices or conservatism among Hindu society, and then we can have social reform and a political modernization in India. That was not entirely a bad idea, and that is why he is known as born rebel. Okay. Now, in order to achieve his task, what did he do? He founded certain organization. For example, Atmiya Sabha in 1815, the Calcutta Unitarian Association 1821, the Brahmo Samaj in 1828. This Brahmo Sabha turned into Brahmo Samaj in later phases. Okay. Brahmo Samaj was the most famous organization at that time, which was started by obviously Raja Ram Mohan Roy. And Brahmo Samaj rose above religious, caste, creed, and so on and so forth grounds. So it was beyond certain dogmatic nature of Hindu society and ill practices of Hindu society. And this Brahmo Samaj opposed various things. For example, idolatry, right? Number one. And they preached monotheism. Okay. Now, if we see, on the one hand, he opposed idolatry, number one, and he preached monotheism. So, one can say that Raja Ram Mohan Roy was influenced by Islamic monotheism and propagated the ideas of monotheism in India. So, he was somehow influenced by the Islamic ideas of monotheism. Now, when we see the purpose of Brahmo Samaj, so how they will achieve their goals. So, Ram Mohan Roy suggested three ways. Number one, according to Raja Ram Mohan Roy, he had to reinvent the classical scriptures to fight the existing dogmas and irrational practices. Number one. Number two, he was a modernist and he promoted modern Western education to uplift the outlook of the masses. And number three, his firm belief in the reformative and modernizing aspects of British rule made him seek the state action to achieve his various programs. So through these three program of action, Brahmo Samaj or Raja Ram Mohan Roy tried to reform various dogmatic characteristics and various you can say conservatism, various ill practices that was prevalent among Hindu social order. Okay, so through these three principles, Raja Ram Mohan Roy and Brahmo Samaj started their movement. So this was the first thing. Now second is he also supported English and modern, or in the other word, modern education system. Although Warren Hastings does not impose English education at that time, but Rajaram Mohan Roy started supporting modern education system much before Lord Macaulay and his civil servant Charles Trevelyan discussed all these things. So he supported the idea of English education and modern, or in other words, modern education in India. He was the greatest champion of emancipation of women, we must not forget it, and supported women's education, number one, widow marriage, number two, remarriage. He also talked about and supported property rights of women. Child marriage is completely banned. He was against child marriage. He spoke against it very critically, and he was against Parda system, that wheel system in India. So he was not only supported the lower caste people in India to have their equality in the society, but also he wanted a modern India with modern institutions, right? Modern democratic institutions, and also he attacked on the status of women in Indian society at that time, and that is why he opposed various ill practices. Most important among them was sati tradition. He openly propagated against sati tradition at that time, when sati was practiced in almost each and every household, and it was considered as a religious tradition. So you can imagine how it was and how bravery one needed to oppose a religious practice, or a so-called practice which is done in the name of religion, to oppose that idea. And since he is regarded as born rebel, Rajaram Mohan Roy opposed sati tradition in India, and as a result of his campaign, sati tradition was completely banned by Lord William Bentinck in 1829. Okay. Again, he founded an English school in 1816. In 1825, he started the Vedanta College, where the study of Western knowledge was combined with that of Indian learning. So he was not against Western education or Western ideas, but he wanted Western ideas to be indigenous, number one, and we must not leave our Indian learning. Okay, but he was certainly against various ill practices. So Lord William Bentinck ended the sati tradition, and various reform movements was started during after the critical voice from Vivekananda. Now the second one is Arya Samaj and contribution of Arya Samaj. See, Arya Samaj was the most influential religious and social reform movement in India. It was started by Swami Dayanand Saraswati. His idea was Vedas are the backbone of Hindu society, and we must go back to the Vedas. All knowledge lies in the Vedas, and today's modern science can be compared with the science of Vedas, or we can find so many things in Vedas which contemporary science actually talks about. So this was his idea on Hindu society, and on how modern science could be equated with the tradition of Vedas and or tradition of Hindu religious text writing. Now, again, just like Ram Mohan Roy, he was opposed to idol worship and ritual, priesthood, for example, caste practices, and the popular Hinduism which was preached by the Brahmins. Okay, he said, no, the Hinduism which are preached by one particular priestly class is not the real Hinduism. To know the real Hinduism, one has to look at the Vedas. So go back to the Vedas was his famous slogan. He did not criticize Western science and he supported the study of Western science. Keep this in mind while supporting study of Vedas, or go back to the Vedas. And he visited almost entire part of India. And in 1875, he formed Arya Samaj in Bombay. Satyarth Prakash was his most famous book, as we all know. This is an important one as well. Many a times, the Arya Samajists or Swami Dayananda Saraswati used Hindi as a means of their writings and preachings, and that is why his ideas got popularity in mainly in North India, and he saw various disciples and followers during that particular period, and many people started following the ideas of Arya Samaj. For example, in Uttar Pradesh, Punjab, Gujarat, Rajasthan, and in Maharashtra, or at that time Bombay Presidency, he established Arya Samaj. So in Bombay he established Arya Samaj. So we have seen he developed a kind of network of Arya Samaj and he got popularity. He also opened various schools for boys and girls, and established these institutions throughout northern India. To promote modern education system through both the mediums, Hindi and English. Okay, so Arya Samaj, that's why Arya Samaj found itself very much inclusive in nature, and many people of northern India and western India started following the teachings of Arya Samaj, whether it is from lower caste or upper caste, and so on and so forth. So, why all of a sudden many people started following Arya Samaj? Because Arya Samaj tried to inculcate the spirit of self-respect and self-reliance among the people of India. Even today, we want self-respect and self-reliance. And at that time, the lower caste groups, the women, and the poor condition of women and lower caste and so on and so forth, they simply had not have self-respect and self-reliance. Arya Samaj propagated the ideas of self-respect and self-reliance in Indian society. This somehow promoted a kind of nationalism in India. So he was against conservative aspects of Hinduism. Clearly, we can see it here. He was against various ill practices, for example, casteism, sati tradition, and widow remarriage. He supported widow remarriage, child marriage. He was opposed to child marriage. Property rights. He demanded the right of property. So these were the things he openly propagated, and that is why many people started following Arya Samaj. Okay. And again, he was against the idol worship. The most important function of Arya Samaj at that time was Shuddhi movement. or purification ceremony. Now, what is that? Suppose some Hindu has been converted to Islam or Christianity, and he or she wants to return to Hindu fold again. So it was the Arya Samaj who started the purification ceremony or Shuddhi tradition, and reconverted all those people into the fold of Hinduism. Why people started joining this purification movement, and why earlier people joined Islam and Christianity by leaving Hinduism? Because of no widow marriage, because of sati tradition, because of casteism, because of upper caste and lower caste, because of discrimination, because of various conservative practices, and so on and so forth. I'm not saying these conservative, not rest of the thing, but if we talk about conservative thing or traditional structures are not found in Islam and Christianity, but in Islam and Christianity you can see that there is no restriction on widow remarriage. There is no, in theory at least, upper caste and lower caste wala structure, and so on and so forth. So people started converting to Islam or Christianity. But when Rajaram Mohan Roy started opposing all these ideas and started saying go back to the Vedas, and started openly supporting all the democratic stuffs and criticizing various ill practices, many Hindu communities who was converted to Islam or Christianity, they returned back to Hindu fold through Arya Samaj purification ceremony or Shuddhi. Now, it is quite clear that Swami Dayananda Saraswati through his Arya Samaj gave Hindu a sense of identity, and this sense of identity he gave through Vedas. Okay. Arya Samaj tried to establish superiority of Vedic religion, Sanatan Dharma for example. And solely and steadily, Arya Samaj attracted large number of youths from throughout the country. And many political leaders also followed the Arya Samaj movement. And many Arya Samajists also joined the Indian national movement in later phases. So we see a kind of mixture of national movement or Indian nationalism with those of Arya Samaj. So such was the impact of Arya Samaj at that time. Now, since we have seen that Arya Samaj was reconverting the Hindus to reconverting Hindus through Shuddhi and purification ceremony, so many Muslim communities and many Christian communities became antagonistic to Arya Samajists. Okay, and they because of this we saw somehow a gap or increasing gap between Hindus and Muslims and Christians communities of India. Blame was given to Arya Samaj because Arya Samaj was openly criticizing Islam and Christianity in India and their practices when they were started converting Hindus to Islam rather than trying to say making people more aware about ill practices or to shed their conservatism or to be their voice. So they found it easier to convert these groups into their fold. So that is why Arya Samaj was highly critical of Islam and Christianity, and openly it criticized it in various channels. So at the particular time, this Arya Samaj also gave a new sense of identity to the Hindu religion and Hindu religious community, which began to question as well as oppose. Earlier, people of Hindu fold from lower caste or women did not oppose or question, but now after the preachings of teachings of Arya Samaj, many Hindu women and many Hindu lower caste people started questions and asking questions and opposition. They started doing it. But on the other hand, while re-establishing the Hindu social order or Hindu religion, Dayanand Saraswati and his Arya Samaj became a severe critique of other religions in India, and they followed aggressive approach towards it. So this is our topic on Raja Ram Mohan Roy and Dayanand Saraswati. Next, we will discuss Bankim Chand Chatterjee and so on and so forth, which I said in my beginning of the lecture. So thank you very much and wait for my next video. Thank you so much.